Hi, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. I'm going to start with the fact that my dog is snoring really loudly in the background. So if you are listening and you think that that's me heavy breathing, it is not. That is my black lab, Rosie, who is 10 years old, and she snores like a freight train. So in case anyone can hear that, that's not me heavy breathing. Today's kind of it's a very serious episode. It's with one of my best friends. And I want, especially for women that are listening, and maybe you came to this podcast today and you've never been here before. Vicky is one of my dearest friends. I'm going to introduce you really quickly and then bring you in. So Vicky Edwards, as I mentioned, one of my closest friends, most amazing human. Love her. I'm going to share in a second how we met. She also has a podcast. Vicky, tell the name of your podcast and also talk about the support group that you have started. I would love to share that in the beginning too. Hi, Vicky, by the way. Welcome.
Hi. And my voice is not usually this husky.
Oh, I like it.
I actually kind of like it.
You sound very, very sexy, lady.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hey, Meghan.
Hello, lady.
It's been a while, so you look really good.
I know we haven't seen each other in you would think we live across the country in over a month.
I know. It's been a while, I feel like.
And we live like a mile away, but go on. Proceed.
I know, life. But yeah, Jackie Miller and Vicky Edwards is our podcast, Life After Divorce, but Funnier. And then I'll get into it later. But our therapist and how we met, which I know you're going to get into, Dr. Nadine, she has an online community for trauma bond survivors. And it's grown. It's now, I think, over 120 people.
Wow.
I'm really proud of that. And I'm proud of her, everything she's doing. It's just amazing. So
I am
I'll
too.
get into that later,
Yeah.
but that's also a terrific community and resource for women.
So Dr. Nadine Macaluso. So I've had her on the podcast numerous times. She was my therapist. She was Vicky's therapist. Why not share? Because Vicky and Jackie have actually been on. So if you want to go backwards into my library, they did an episode with me, probably a couple of years ago at this point.
Oh my God, has it been that long? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It could have been I don't know. Time just, it goes so fast. So Dr. Nadine Macaluso has been on my podcast. She was my therapist. She was part of the reason I even started a podcast because she motivated me to do something creative. And over 4 years ago, I started this. And I would say Vicky and I met probably how many years ago? Over 3?
Yeah.
Okay. So over 3 years ago, I'll say one day I was still in the midst and the thick of, I had started the podcast. I was doing a little better, but I still was not doing great. I was still dealing with a lot of the fallout from that horrible Karen situation. And if you want to hear about the Karens, it's a friend breakup I went through. And I saw this lovely lady walking down the Strand. So we both live in Manhattan Beach. Right by the beach, there's a path, a bike path, and a path where people walk and they ride their bikes. And I saw her staring out at the ocean, looking pretty upset. And I said, "Are you Vicky?" Because she had been messaging me. And she said, "Yeah." And that's how we met.
That is how we met. And that, I've told you, was the first time that day that I was like, all right, today I'm going to shower. I'm going to look somewhat presentable. I'm going to go down to the beach with my dog. And it was so we've talked about this. I felt like destiny that I would run into you that day. Because it took a lot for me that day to even get out of the house.
Leave the house.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And when I met you, I was walking with another friend. And I remember just kind of looking at you and you just looked depleted. And I understand that feeling of just so much sadness. And from then on, we were stuck together. And something great, listeners, about Vicky that I love is she's just an amazing lady. She's supportive of other women. You know, we're going to get into her story in a second, but she always comes from a place of kindness and goodness. And she just wants to see other people do well. And I know how loyal she is. So anytime, you know, we've called each other crying, I don't even know how many times at this point, or angry or pissed. And I always know she has my back. And something about Vicky that I love so much is I never feel like a feeling of I can't trust her. So I don't know. I always talk about Julie, my best friend that I lost, and how I really believe she sent me people, or she sends new souls and new friends into my life. And I truly, truly believe Vicky is one of those people. And what we share in common.
I'm glad I brought tissues later.
But I mean that, you know, I mean that. And I think sadly we share some hard things, a lot of trauma, and a lot of like we've gone through it together in different ways. But if you could count like your friends that matter to you more than anything on a hand, you're one of them. So I always want you to know that and how much I love you. We've all been put here for a reason, and we all deserve acceptance.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.
I'm a trauma survivor from a really young age, and I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD in the past few years. I've been surrounded by death and abuse much of my life. I've been dragged through the mud and have been to the point of not wanting to go on anymore. Through my interviews with other survivors, I've learned that there is a way out. From recovering to surviving and thriving, we all have the strength to come out the other side.
You are listening to Judging Meghan.
Okay, so now we're going to get into Vicky's story. So, Vicky, I'm going to start with kind of like what I always start with, which is your backstory. Tell my listeners kind of where you grew up and where you're from, because you won't be able to tell by the accent. You just sound so American. Go ahead.
I was like, is it okay to say I'm slightly offended by that? I'm just kidding.
I mean, you never know these days, but go ahead, especially how your family and friends must think these days, but go ahead.
I'm originally from Denmark. I moved here with my family originally to Orange County in high school. And then I went to Boston for college, and then I went back to Denmark for a little bit, and then I've been in the Los Angeles area ever since. Just a few years.
Just a couple years. We're only in our late 20s. Yeah. So what we're going to talk about today is really hard. Okay. So since Vicky and I have met, I've said to Vicky, I really want you to come on the podcast, but I want you to come on when you are okay and you feel safe. And for my listeners that are out there that might be dealing with an abusive marriage or an abusive situation, this is a hard story for Vicky to share. So it took years for her to feel like, you know, Meghan, I want to come on and share this story. Yeah, she's been 4 years or however many years since we've met. But also, you know, she's been on before sharing a little bit of her story, but it was never really going into detail. And so today we're going to share the story of kind of how you met your ex-husband, and you really wanted to come on for just the real reason is to support other women. And if you're listening and you are in a situation where you find yourself not wanting to get out, please share this with a friend. Please know that there's always help and there's always hope. So Vicky, can you start with kind of how you met your husband? How do we want to rename him? What's the name we can call him for sake of me not getting in trouble?
How about Paul? No offense to any Pauls.
No, I like the name Paul. Let me think of somebody I don't like. Frank. And sorry if you're listening and your name is Frank. Let's call him Frank. Go ahead.
All right, Frank. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. And for anyone going through something difficult, which I think is kind of your tagline you say a lot, is you're not alone. And that was sorry, everyone, I'll probably be emotional. And my main reason for coming on here is to like you said, to tell women or men, whoever, it's not just women, that you're not alone. And I just want to be clear, I didn't come on here for sympathy or anything like that. I just think there's true power in telling your truth, connection, and hopefully helping others through my story. So I just want to be very clear with that. I met Frank in the summer of 2000 through my high school best friend who wanted to set us up. And at the time, I was starting my business. I was in my early 20s. I wasn't looking for anything. Frankly, I was just like, wow, he's really hot and looks good with his shirt off. Like, okay.
That's what we do in our 20s. Yeah.
You know, there was nothing. He had not just a few years out of undergrad, like just starting his life. We were all just starting out. Like, it wasn't like some like, oh, he comes from money or this, or like he had nothing, like nothing. So that is how we met initially. And looking back, you know, I didn't realize it at the time, but, you know, Dr. Nay, as we call her, talks a lot about love bombing. But at the time in my early 20s, oh my gosh, just from the get-go to get that much attention from a guy just felt really good. And he's so charismatic and smart and like, hey, let's take all our money out and go to Hawaii, you know. And I remember literally we took all the money out of the ATM, brought beef jerky, but you know, he was exciting and like, let's move in together. Like, everything was super quick, and it's almost like you're in this whirlwind of just like I'm not sure how to explain it, but you're not even seeing what you're in.
Yeah.
And
almost like a movie, right?
Yes.
Like
oh my
how
God, I felt like I was living a movie.
Yeah, like a romantic comedy movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, exactly. I was in the rom-com of all rom-coms.
Yeah.
I kind of grew up being like, that's what I want, which is a whole nother thing about our society, right? And so before I knew it, I think it was 6 months into it, we were at the Malibu courthouse getting married. Didn't tell anyone. And like you said at the time, like, this is so romantic, right? And not shortly after, things started changing. And it wasn't anything physical at that time, but just more emotional and infidelity and all of the things, to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I left literally with nothing, and I had to change my number, and it was very dramatic. And then he went off to business school, and a year after, like, we hadn't spoken in a year because I changed my number. I'm fast forwarding. There's some facts I don't think are necessarily important. And then this is all my fault. I was out with girlfriends one night drinking, and I was like, I wonder whatever happened to Frank, you know? And it's been a year, and you think maybe people have changed, you know, like, it's been a long time. We left in such a horrible, dramatic fashion. We literally had to get divorced. Mm-hmm. But that was a horrible conversation to tell my parents. Oh my God, it was awful. So I called him and I left this, I'm not proud, really like a drunk message. Like, it's Vicky, you remember me? You know, kind of thing, with my new number. And I remember waking up in the morning and being like, oh my God. I'm like, but there's no way he's going to call me back. Like, he's not going to call me back. But he did call me back. And to be totally honest with you, Meghan, when I first talked to him, it never feels good to end on such a horrible note with people. Mm-hmm. So we really just had a nice conversation, like funny, laughing, and it felt kind of good to just be like, oh, okay, that's kind of squashed. Initially, I had no thoughts about, I want to get back to anything. And then we kept chatting. And then he's like, hey, why don't you fly out? Went back east for business school. Why don't you fly out and come see me? And at the time I was like, I'm single. Hey, why not? Fun weekend in New York. And I went, and as soon as he opened the door, I'm not going to lie, my heart was like, because what I realize now wasn't chemistry in my mind. I thought we just have this intense chemistry that you just can't find anywhere.
Yeah.
So from that weekend on, fast forward, I remember him calling me one day. He's like, I decided we're getting back together. And honestly, my reaction, that's also where I've learned you've really got to trust your gut.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? I remember him being really like, you don't sound happy. I was like, no, this is great news. And in my mind, I'm like, but we're on opposite coasts, so whatever. And then we would meet in different places, and we met in Vegas. And he's like, I don't ever want to lose you again. And we freaking got married again. You'd think this one would learn her lesson the first time, but I did not, Meghan. And so in secret, we married again, little white wedding chapel in Vegas. And then from there, even though we were on different coasts, kind of that emotional manipulation started again. But then you're like, I'm fucking married again.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized how quickly too, I was sucked into everything again. Even though it had been a year, it took me no time at all to get sucked into it again. It really didn't. Which was kind of scary. And I think that's another reason why even almost 4 years from, which we'll get to, my separation, I'm not dating, because there's many reasons. But one of them is I'm so scared to get sucked in again.
I think that's so common though, Vicky. I think so many women that have been traumatized like you were feel that way.
But sometimes I feel but that's another thing. But that is one of the main reasons. So fast forward, he gets a job, he moves out to California. Everything is just on this pace. You're just in it now. And then we have this like engagement, even though we're secretly married. So then now everyone thinks you're engaged and you're just on this road to getting married and having kids and building this life that on the outside, for me at least, looked close to perfect in the end. We were both very driven individuals. He's a very, good-looking man, charming man, all the pedigree. And then we had kids, and then I became a stay-at-home mom. And on the outside, 2 country clubs, bought a house in Manhattan Beach, all the things. And I think in looking back on it, it's like a slow burn. Things just kept getting worse. There was no between, even just forget the abuse, all the infidelity was really hard on me. And I think when we had the kids, it made it worse because then the attention was even more away from him, is my hypothesis.
No, that's so common too. You hear about that all the time. Wait, one thing I don't want to blurt in, but when you got back together, and I think that many women can relate to what you're saying and the blame piece of like, why did I do this? Like, why did I get myself into this? I think the chemistry part of this is a big part of it, and the excitement, and just when you're like so passionate and young and it's exciting, I think when I hear you kind of beat yourself up about it, I think so many women fall prey or fall victim to this because, I'm guilty of this myself in a different way, obviously, but just when I was young, I always liked the douchey guy. Like I always liked the guy that was like, the guys that liked me, I was like, they like me too much. I was not into that. I wanted to be with the guy that was mean to me and was not great. And probably I dated people that cheated on me. Like, I think that's a very common thing for women. I don't know what it stems from exactly, but I think it's so common.
Agreed. And I have to say, I agree with you, but face value, he really presented himself as I volunteer.
Yeah.
I went to one of the top universities in the country.
Yeah.
I'm just this perfect guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the perfect life and save you from everyone and everything. Like, that's kind of his MO.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then like got you like reeled in. But then my other question was, because now we're getting into the chapter of like, you know, you in Manhattan Beach and you had children, and then kind of like, obviously when you're a mother, your attention goes to your kids. It just does. And usually the dads, if they're good dads, they understand that. But was he physical at that point? Was he like more verbally before the kids?
So I think, I know rather. It started more emotional abuse, more controlling behaviors.
Like
and
what?
And then it just kind of, everything, like to what was I doing during the day, to financially controlling me, to like if he traveled a lot. And I would just be like, okay, we're going to go meet friends because he's not there. So why not? It's like, oh, you can't be by yourself, to try to a lot of isolation. He would tell my parents, she's not talking to you for 6 months just because you're a bad influence on what I still don't know. But a lot of that kind of stuff. Right. And I remember if we'd be out, and I am actually a very social person, but if he felt for some reason, it's funny, the things I think attracted him to me in the beginning, he really wanted squashed down when we were together, which is very interesting. So if he felt that I was being too funny, or maybe the attention was on me and not him, he would literally turn to me and be like, settle down, like in front of people.
Oh, so people would hear it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, just, no, he wanted to dim my light. That's how I felt.
What did your parents say at that point, or your friends? Because this is so common that women get themselves into these situations and they get pulled away from family or friends.
Well, if I can say, just backtrack a little bit. When over time you're controlled and put down, emotionally manipulated, emotional abuse, it's slowly chipping away at your confidence. So you get to a point where one day you just don't even recognize yourself, and you start thinking, wait, maybe I am what he says, ungrateful and all these horrible things, right? Maybe I am that way. Like you start believing that the sky is purple, even though somewhere, that's not true. You kind of start believing it. And then they're also slowly isolating you. So to answer your question, I was being isolated.
Yeah.
And to also answer that question, not to fast forward through my whole story, but after he was arrested, I had friends then tell me, I pulled away from our friendship because of how he treated you. I had neighbors tell me, we knew, we almost called the police numerous times. Sorry, that was really hard for me to hear, because I thought I really managed it well, So it was really hard to hear that people were thinking that, and especially my neighbors, to be like, no, my 18-year-old son, whose bedroom was close to my house, she's like, he would ask me a few times, can I call the police now? That was really hard to hear. So just fast forward.
It's okay. It's okay. You can get upset.
That answers your question.
Yeah.
And then, it's like when you're in it, I've never blamed it. Because what do you say? I'm in, I've never said, maybe they saw things, but I never told them things, right? He's a very intimidating person. And my one friend I've known since childhood, when she tried to even stand up for me a little bit, he was like, well, you're done with that friendship. You know?
So he was slowly kind of like, I mean, this is the trauma bond piece of it, like peeling away like layers. This is what they do. And, you know, like he's very good at it. He's a narcissist. He's all of these things. And you start to believe that kind of.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%.
About yourself. You know what? Also, I think must be so hard not to skip ahead for you is we live in Los Angeles, but it's such a small town. And it's a 2-mile radius basically of the beach towns, like in the area where we live. And so everybody's in each other's business. So were you kind of like, I don't want people to know this secret? Like, are people talking behind my back? Like, how did you feel? Or were you just,
of shame. Sorry to interrupt you. It was a lot of shame. And to your point, embarrassment, shame. Mm-hmm. And I was also trying to tell myself almost daily, but no, I'm really lucky. Mm-hmm. I'm really lucky because I'm here. I don't have to work. I have all these beautiful things. I have my 2 boys. Like, so I'm also trying to sell myself the story is also part of it.
And also then, by that point, we kind of went back and then skipped ahead. So you had your 2 boys at this point. So you have 2 sons.
Yes.
And then, so the abuse just continued to like go from verbal to at some point it turned into physical, correct?
Correct. Now, what's, not interesting is not the word I'm looking for, but I used to think physical abuse was like being pummeled to death. Right? Like almost in a hospital. The truth is he was always a big grabber from the beginning, which really is physical abuse. Like really a lot, like holding me like this, a lot of grabbing. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, so with the kids, as they were getting older, I knew there are more pressures that come with being parents and money and things like that. He started parenting in a way I did not agree with, to say the least. A lot of verbal and emotional abuse. One child was the soldier. The other one was basically nothing and treated as such. At times wouldn't be given food. And I think that's the guilt I have as a mom was staying as long as I did for them. But my thought at the time was, if I'm not here to protect them, who's going to? Because I would stand in the doorway of their bedroom that they shared and be like, you're not coming in here. Or when my youngest was deprived food, sent to his room, I'd sneak him food.
And he was still, by the way, we left out really little at that point.
Yeah, very little. Or I would tell them almost every night, no one can tell you who you are, including your father, because of all the horrible things he would say to them to try to repair the damage. So, and he knew he didn't like when I was in there by myself. So he'd be like, Vicky, what are you doing? And we were all like this. Jackie actually called it once the garage door syndrome. Like when you knew he was home, we're all like, oh my God, okay. Like everyone smiles on, like not outwardly, but you could tell all of us were like this.
By the way, I understand that feeling of and it is a true thing. I went through that with my stepfather. I knew when he was coming in the house, I would be like, hit the deck and hide, basically. It's a horrible, horrible feeling.
No, it's terrible. But what people don't, if I could say one thing too, it's not like every day is like that, right? Mm-hmm. So you cling on to those moments, the good moments, because you want to. And that's also part of the cycle, right? The good moments were amazing. And then the shoe drops. And then there's this whole period. And then comes the groveling from all 3 of us to make it right. And then it's like, okay, I forgive you, and it's this weird thing with the person that is causing you the harm is the only person that can make you feel better. It's a really fucked up thing. So as time went on, the physical abuse with me and my youngest got a lot worse, especially my younger son. To this day, I'm not quite sure why I have my theories on why. And through his trauma therapy, there's things he did to my son that I didn't even know. And that's still really hard for me. Sorry.
That's okay. And by the way, let me just interrupt you while you blow your nose or whatever you're going to do right now on camera. I'm going to try and make you laugh. I try to do this. This is serious and really hard, and it's okay to be upset. Like the people that are listening as well. I think a lot of women can relate that find themselves in these situations of, just try, especially there's so many people that you look from the outside and you're one of them, pretty, had this great looking family, live in this big, beautiful house. But to hold, and like also there was the piece of you that was afraid to leave because you had left your job. There's so much of that piece in there, but just know that the blame part of it is not your fault. I mean, I can't reiterate that to you enough we talk about this often. And for my listeners, like, I don't know a freaking better mom than you. I mean, if you had to compare you and I as momming, I think I would get an F. Because you're the best mom, and everything you've done is for those two boys, and the two boys know it too. So I want to add that in, but I'll let you finish. I just wanted to give you a little
I appreciate
break.
That is definitely not true. It is not easy being a parent. We all are trying our best, and not to skip ahead, but if I may, I'll actually get to that later, but I've definitely been lucky, but thank you. But parenting is fucking hard, even in normal circumstances.
Oh, yeah.
So as time went on, the punishments, whether it be physical or financial, or things like, when you get back to being hard to leave, I don't have any family here. It's just me. And he knew that. And then you're being isolated for almost 2 decades. And your self-confidence is at 0. He's the breadwinner. I'm being told verbatim, you will have no one and nothing. And that was the biggest things I had to work on in therapy. That had been ingrained in my brain. I had this image, so much so, of me like in a puddle of mud in this abandoned basement. That was really ingrained in me. And I was scared because he comes off like he has this powerful job. He has the resources, and I remember when the last vacations were standing looking on the water, and he comes from behind me and he's like, beautiful view, right? I'm like, yeah, it's stunning. He's like, remember all of this? Gone just like that. So it's a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And you start to believe it. And then there's also, like we said too, the shame of being, I don't want the community we live in not necessarily to judge me, but my children. There's so many factors, just to your point of not leaving. So one of his punishments to me, to the no one and nothing, was I would move into our guest room. And he would say, just remember, this is what your life would be like without me. Just some 1-room apartment somewhere, with nothing. And so one of those nights when I was in that situation, a week before, he had gotten really upset with me and had butted me.
I know this story is hard.
And I think for me, that was like, wow, it's my face. Like he is at the point now where he doesn't even care that I have marks on my face. It's one thing. I used to have so many bruises people couldn't see in my body, but now it's my face. Now we're reaching another level. And we had gone on vacation, which was a terrible vacation. And we had come back, and that's again when back from vacation, he specifically told me, vacation's over. And he was upset with me because this is an example where my kids used to have, what is it, like a lizard? Was it gecko? Right. And we came back, and I was always trying to, it's like you can't win. Either I didn't do enough, or I didn't do it right, or I didn't do it fast enough. As Jackie would say, you're set up to fail. So the tank was dirty because we'd been gone for a week. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to clean it. I'm going to be the good wife. And I was like, okay. And he brought up to our son, this needs to be cleaned. I'm like, I got it. And he'd be like, why do you always have to take credit for everything? I'm like, I just said I cleaned. It was that kind of thing. So he storms off for the day. And now the cycle begins because I did that. Come home, I am in the guest room. And when we had been on vacation, like I said, that was a breaking point for me after he did that to me. And that was the first time I admitted to my therapist, our therapist. And one of my girlfriends, I was talking to her, she's like, okay, your voice is just basically cut the shit. What the fuck is happening? And I knew at that moment, because once you open the door, there's no turning back. Once you tell people the truth.
Had you, and this, I know this friend. So had you told this friend, you had like a plan or something, correct?
Well, this is what I'm getting to.
Okay. Sorry.
So I sent her, because she's like, what's happening?
Had you told her before? That was what I meant to say.
No.
You had never confided.
I mean, I'd said, hey, like the normal, I don't want to say normal marriage stuff, but nothing about abuse. She knew Frank was not the easiest person in the world. That was pretty evident, but nothing beyond that at this point. And I sent her a picture of my face, and she calls me up, and she's just in shock. And she just kept saying, this is not okay. This is not okay. My parents live 2 hours away from where you are. I'm sending you. She was like in this. And I was like, no. Like that was like my biggest fear. It's like, no. And during that trip too, I would sit there. And if I didn't have a smile on my face in front of my children, he'd be like, if you don't put a smile on your face, I'm going to punch you in the fucking face. And my oldest would be like, Mom, just put on a smile. Just put on a smile. So that was that vacation.
Was that the vacation before he had butted you?
No, during
the same vacation.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So my point is that whole week was the breaking point.
Yeah.
So now we're back. I'm now sequestered to the guest room. He didn't want me to even leave that room. He put the kids to bed. So I was unaware of what happened when he put the kids to bed. But my girlfriend and I had made a plan that if this happened again, I would call her and she would call the police. And to be honest with you, at that time, in the back of my mind, I was hoping that would never happen. Mm-hmm. I was hoping that would not, like, we're just making this plan, but it's never actually going to happen in my mind. And part of it was to appease her from not doing, all these things she wanted to do to help me. Not in a bad way, but I just wasn't.
But that's the guilt, like the scared piece, I'm sure, where you were like, oh my God, why did I open my mouth? Now I have to. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
And so that night, he just kept coming into the room. He was just fired up. And he first came in and he had a glass of water and he's just like, I fucking hate you, and throws it in my face and my t-shirt. Like, I'm soaked and I don't say anything. I've learned, like, I don't say anything. And I just go. And again, I've moved into the guest room. So I take off my shirt. I put on a new shirt, go back to bed. And then he comes in again. And he's like berating me. And I'm sitting on the bed, on the edge of the bed. And he's like, one of my purse. He's like, how'd you get this fucking purse? You know, and funny, not funny, just to make a joke out of it. In retrospect, I'm like, you could have chosen a nicer purse. You chose like some like random Target purse.
And also you have a really good bag collection.
Like,
so you're like, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Is that the one you chose? Not to make light. I'm just trying to make
There's
myself
light in everything, sadly. You have to find light.
And by the way, I did not think that at the time, but just looking
back at it. Yeah. He didn't pick like your Hermes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like my Louis Vuitton. Nope. Just some like red Target bag. It was actually Tory Burch, but anyhow.
He was just looking for anything.
Yes.
Is the point.
Looking for anything is the point. So I'm sitting there and he takes the bag and I'm like, you can't. And I just had this moment. It was almost, Meghan, like a out of body experience where it's like I was talking, but it's like I was looking at someone else talk. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. And I remember very vividly, I was like pleading with him. Not anger, but pleading, like, you can't treat me like this anymore. And the last words that man directly spoke to me were, he looked at me straight in my eyes like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And then he had the bag, and then he hit me on the side of the head with the bag. And I just started saying, no, no, no. That's all I could think of to say. Was just no. I probably said no. I don't even know how many times. He's like, what are you going to do? Call the police? Like laughing at me. I'm like, no, I'm calling my friend. And I called her. She didn't answer. Then she called back and he's like, put it on speaker. So I put it on speaker and he said hi and her name. And he said it in such a way that I hear her gasp. And she's like, and hangs up. And that's when she called the police. And she said, I knew Vicky from the sound of his voice. It was not okay. And within minutes, and I've learned later they don't put the sirens on with domestic violence. We had the police at our door. And this man, Meghan, sits down on the couch and puts on ESPN with the police.
I've heard this story, obviously, but he put this, for my listeners, he put ESPN on as the police were in questioning you or questioning him?
As soon as I open the door, both.
Okay.
The police are there and they separate you. So we hear the door and he must have known somewhere in his mind. Mm-hmm. And so he just moseys into her family room, puts on ESPN and just sits there like this. So I open the door and they immediately, I go with one officer, the other officer goes with him. And I actually did not know, I'm sure everyone else knows, that they had body cams. So it wasn't till many months later when I saw his body cam that I see he never left the couch, even when they were questioning him, to answer your question. That's how little he gave a shit or thought was going to happen. Now you have to remember, which I haven't said at this point, he's also spent the day ripping all the clothes out of my closet. He ripped the glasses off my face, broke them in two. Like a lot of other things have happened.
Also with your kids as well.
Well, that's
the separate piece.
I'll get to.
Okay.
Yeah. So the police can see, and again, I've been sequestered in the guest room with things. There's a wet t-shirt. Like they can see something has transpired here. There's a broken lamp. Like something has happened here. And I just went into total shock. I honestly don't remember my entire conversation with the police. He asked about, he could still see a slight bruise on my forehead from when he had abetted me a week prior. I told him exactly what had happened. I also had some light marks on my chest from him, like, poking at me. Then he asked, and this is what really surprised me at the time, because at the time, I'm just thinking about myself. And you have to remember, I hadn't seen my kids for hours because I was told to not leave the guest room. He put the kids to bed. And so he's like, do you have children? I'm like, yes. He's like, well, I need to speak with them. And it's funny, at the time, I almost was like, wait, what? Like, they're minors. Like, leave them out of this. Mm-hmm. He's like, I want you to come in there and wake them up. Because I believe it was around 9:00 in the evening. I may be a little off, but they were already in bed. And he's like, and then you need to leave. And I remember at the same time being like, I mean, is that even legal that they can question minors, like, without their parent? And my children were 8 and 11 at that time, roughly. And then, so I wasn't there. I was with another officer. He closed the door, and how a period of time later he came out, and his face, I just knew my kids would have said something to him, because his face just said it all. And he's like, do you know that your husband hit your children? And I had to be honest, I was like, yes. Mm. And so after that, I don't quite remember. Again, I was in shock. The arresting officer, so where I'm really lucky, like, not to talk about other stories, but from what I understand of Gabby Petito, where I was extremely lucky is I had officers who obviously had some training in domestic violence. Because he said to me, even if you don't press charges, we are arresting him tonight. Because we, like, the evidence that domestic violence occurred here today. And he asked me if I wanted to press charges. And I'm sitting there, Meghan, I remember like this, just like in shock. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Because that's a big deal to press charges. And the officer said to me, I'll never forget it. He's like, all I could tell you is that this is a cycle, and you already have a bruise from a week ago. And I whispered. And then he reiterated how he's going to be arrested regardless. And I whispered to him, okay. Like, I'll press charges.
Because maybe somewhere in the back of your mind, I mean, also, I know the piece of it where it's like, you don't even want to believe that this is true, and it's like, you knew that it's somewhere in the back of your mind that this was like final and you're actually doing something. But I think also, I wonder if you knew that this could escalate to even worse, like the hitting of the face, like you brought up how he had bruised your face a week earlier, and then the bags. And then it's kind of like, well, where's this going to go next?
What it was, Meghan, were those words when I was begging him, saying, you can't treat me like this anymore. Mm-hmm. And he was in my face, eye to eye, this far from my face, saying, I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
That terrified me.
Were you also kind of like, he's gonna, like, he could kill me?
No,
like that
but
kind
that's
of
what I'm saying.
of
What's
it.
the next step?
The next step.
Already it's my face. What is it?
Well, you can't also help but think of like OJ, or like you brought up Gabby Petito. Like, thank God the officers that came to your house, shout out Manhattan Beach Police Department, yeah. You're the best. Were trained in this, because think about how many women are not, how many officers are not, and would have just left. And then what would he have done?
100%. But that's why I wanted to call it out. Why I'm so, I was lucky. Yeah. Is my point. And I was also really lucky because I remember whatever period of time later, I don't honestly remember, the police officer shows up again with an emergency protective order from a judge that also checked that my ex, that Frank had to move out immediately. I never even asked for that. The judge, just on his own, was like, you're done. And so after the police officer, after I said, okay, and I saw this later on the body cam, and you also have to remember, this is a man who used to text me, why don't you fucking kill yourself? Okay. That was one of his favorite things to say to me. Sorry.
It's okay. Do you know how hard this is for somebody that loves you so much to not be able to give you a hug? We should have done this in person because it's hard.
And I just want to be very clear again. I am not asking for sympathy. This is not why I'm doing this. If I can just, I am not here to, and for me, it's not about speaking badly about even trying to shame my ex-husband and it has actually nothing to do with him, to be totally honest. And putting myself out there, there's a part of me with this that's like, oh, when someone sees it in a community, are they going to judge me? To be honest, this is not easy for me on many different levels. And there's also a part where it re-traumatizes you telling the story. But I just want to be clear. I am not here for sympathy. I am not here to bash my ex. The court, like, I know my truth. I don't need to do that. It goes back to, I'm here for people going through it. Again, you're not alone. There is support and you can get through it. Not to get ahead of myself, but it's very important to me that it's clear why I'm here. So later I saw on the body cam that the arresting officer comes in. You know, at this point, he's interviewed me. He's interviewed the children. He's decided he's also going to be arrested on child abuse and asks Frank, he's like, so tell me what happened here tonight. And he literally goes, nothing, zero. We just came back from a great vacation. Nothing. And the officer, he's just like, man, and he literally is like, man, just come on, just say the truth. And Frank is still like sitting like this. No. He's like, all right. And the arresting officer's like, okay. Because mind you, he's been interviewed separately, right? So he gets up and then the officer is like, you're under arrest. And reads and Frank is just in shock then. You just go, what? What? Like, what? And that is part of me is like crazy to me. How do you sit there and say, nothing, zero, everything is great? Like, that is just insanity.
That's the definition, though, of what this kind of human being is, like a full-fledged narcissist. You know,
no, for sure.
Like,
and there's body cam of him laughing in the jail cell as they're reading his emergency order, like to not contact me. He's literally like, and they're like, can we just please get through this? And maybe part of it is a defense mechanism, right? It's not to, I'm not truly on I'm not trying to put him down. It must have been a very scary experience for him.
Okay, well, I'm not going to sympathize, but that's you and your wounded inner child, like talking through the horrific behavior. So I will say not okay. And for all of the women that are listening, that's you coming back into right?
Fair. No, You're right. But it was very disturbing for me to see that. It was.
But also, Vicky, because deep down, this is your husband. You had children with this person. You love him. Think about how many women are in your exact 100%. Shoes right now. Maybe some are listening 100%. Today. And what you said a few minutes ago is, and I know you, I know what you stand for. I know what kind of person you are. I know I talk about all the time. This is part of why I do the podcast. Turn your pain into purpose. Like, we go through things in life, even the worst. Like, your story is one of the worst stories I know. And I've heard some really horrific stories, but you're somebody that takes that pain and you really genuinely try to help other people. So if you're a woman or a man and you're listening to this right now, and I know why you're on and you're sharing this story, what would you say to some of the people that are in the very end stages saying, I'm not going to get punched in the face again. I'm not going to get thrown across a room. This is going to escalate to the point where I'm afraid for my life, or I'm afraid for my children's lives. And then, the whole piece of it ahead, which is dealing with the divorce courts and dealing with divorce and all of that piece of it, which we aren't even at yet. But I need to stop you and ask you that question.
You know what I would say? The 3 words that to this day mean the most to me that I would say to them, Meghan, is I see you. I see you. I believe you. There is a way out. It may take longer than you want. It's not easy, but there is a way out. And there are so many resources that unfortunately some are not even. For example, I just found out 2 days ago that in the DC area, there's pro bono attorneys that help people in these situations to cover some of their legal fees, to help with babysitting if they need to go to court. There are resources in your area. You may just need to look a little bit harder, but don't let that deter you. There are more resources than you think. And I would also say, you can't see it now, but you are going to be more than okay. Because I tell you what, I don't have that syndrome of a garage door anymore. I hear my garage door 1,000 times a day with my kids, and I don't think a second of it. This is my home that is safe. I am me. My kids, through all of this, they have been able to find themselves again. We don't live in fear. You can do it. It's hard, but you can do it. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Let me ask you, what if you were listening and you're at that very end stage? And what do you tell? Like, do you just tell one person? Like in your case, you told one person, and because you were already in therapy with Dr. Nay. And what was the piece of advice Dr. Nay said to you? I can't remember. Was it something along the lines of "you'll know when"? Was it something like that?
You will know when.
Okay.
And listen, I am not here to give any sort of legal advice, but I would just say make sure you document what you can, would be my advice. Know your rights. And that goes back to doing some research. And I understand I didn't have energy to do anything. At that time, there's times, Meghan, I was laying on the floor and I couldn't even move from all my trauma. So I understand how hard it is. But know your rights. Above all, don't give up. Sometimes it's 1 hour at a time. It doesn't even have to be a day at a time. But don't give up.
What about like support groups? So I want to talk about, for the sake of time, just a few like brief things, because I also want to tell you thank you for sharing that piece of it, because that's not even an eighth of the story, but we would be here for this would be a 5-hour long podcast if you shared all the stuff that's happened since. I mean, I've been here during this journey. I even offered to like go to court with you. And I was like, can I get on the stand and be like in Law and Order? Because it's my dream. And you're like, Meghan, you can't come. You have to stay home.
True
like,
story.
Yeah.
Yes.
But in all seriousness, the pieces of this are, there's so much more to this story and so much like horrible stuff that has continued to go on even to this day, to be honest, or last week or the week before. There's things that still happen, like the custody piece of it, the divorce piece of it. You are divorced now. Can you kind of tell my listeners a little bit, like for the sake of time, what like after that ended, because that's not the end, clearly, just a piece of like what you've been going through the past few years?
Well, to make it brief, family course is not fun.
Yeah.
It is not educated in domestic violence. I do think there's a push to change that now. That is where, because I still do work with women, even on an individual basis, where I was extremely lucky actually to have a judge for my trial who was very educated in abuse. But that unfortunately is not the case. There's also for women, especially a lot of times, they're really looking at us. You can't be too emotional, even though it's extremely emotional. So I guess my advice would be, I know how hard it is to sit there in that courtroom, but you have to kind of keep your eye on the prize in the sense of, I'm doing this for my safety, my children's safety. I don't know if you're into yoga, if you're into therapy, whatever it is, to really sit there and rein in your emotions during court is really important, because you can't think clearly when you're over emotional anyway, right? And then the judge doesn't really get a good sense of what's going on and who you are. But yeah, it took me 3 years to get officially divorced in the court system.
I don't even want to ask, because I've asked you and Jackie how much money combined. So if you want to listen to a previous episode, I think it's with Vicky and Jackie Miller from probably 2 years ago. I don't know the episode number. I might put it in the show notes so you all can hear the kind of about the court system. But I know that you touched on the amount of money you've spent.
It's over $1 million combined with Frank and I, and by the way, we're not rich. That was like, we sold our house. I used to be really upset about that number. Mm-hmm. To be frank, it's closer to 2. Gosh darn it.
Okay, but what, like your case is that expensive. What if somebody doesn't have the financial?
But that's
means?
What I'm saying.
Yeah.
There are resources that you need to find in your area with legal services that can help you. And then my biggest advice, which I was given in the beginning and I didn't understand it, was you have to go through the motions. There's a system in place when the court especially comes to custody is like step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it is a marathon. And you're going to be at step 2 and be exhausted. It's okay to be exhausted. Take a day, take whatever you need. And then you got to pick yourself back up and keep going. And remember, it's a marathon. It truly, truly is. And just, again, know that unfortunately, our system is set up. There's no way to circumvent all those steps. You just have to patiently go through all of them.
I just want to reiterate something too. So like when I met you, I talked in the beginning about like the shell of a person that you were when I met you, like just the look on your face. And you had been out of it, the marriage at that point, for like a year when we met? Or
probably around you.
Okay.
I don't know.
And now, like what you are, which is a strong, like beautiful inside and out. Also going back to school, like if you're listening, listeners, you can it's hard, like life's hard, but you can let Vicky be an example. You can pull yourself out of these situations. It's scary. It sucks. It's awful. I've been on phone calls with her when we're both ugly crying and she's felt like hopeless, but this is all part of what you have to do, because my next question is, would you ever go back and not do it again?
Never.
So there's that.
I don't even have to think about that answer.
And you said like you now are living a life where, you know, you're still dealing with it. It's not fun. This is a person that's going to he's still doing things. Vicky has a restraining order, you know, and I worry. And I think people worry, but you're strong. You have your dapper looking sons that are just handsome and strong and, you know, like taking care of you, and you're their mama bear. But I love that you said that, because I want the listeners to really hear that.
And can I say to that point, Meghan,
go ahead.
That you'll be surprised. Listen, I said, I have no family here, right? I didn't have a mom or a dad or a sister, or brother, uncle, whoever to come and take me out of it. You will also be surprised at who will come and help you. I mean, to be positive about, you know, there's obviously the other side of that, but I'd really like to focus on the positive side of it. My neighbors, oh my God, because the first thing he did was cut me off from all our finances. Like, they came over with food. They came like emotional support. They had an emergency fund with cash. You know, like, it was crazy to me. And my community, if someone is listening that, you know, people I didn't even know that my kids would be in their little local games cheering my kids on, you know, like how much that has meant to them. So I guess my point is, you'll be surprised at maybe where your support will come from. So I know it's scary. I know it's scary, but you can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
You're a badass and you're strong too. I mean, I believe that. I believe it takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. I want to close with where people can find you, and also talk about the support group. Can you close with that? Can we kind of talk about that?
Well, they can find us just if you look up at Jackie Miller and Vicky Edwards, our podcast, and we also have an Instagram account under the same name. For the community, it's tbrg.com. That is the Trauma Bond Recovery Group website. There are also a lot of resources on the National Domestic Violence website and hotline. That's a great resource to start. I actually really like the Gabby Petito website that they've started for domestic violence and resources. I looked at it recently, and I go back to, in the day of social media and the internet, really look at the local resources that are there for you. Because once you start looking into it, you will probably be extremely happily surprised at how many local resources there are. And I hate to use the word bootstrap, but even bootstrap people who are really passionate about this. So that would be my advice.
Well, I'm so proud of you. You did great. You did not ugly cry one time. I think I was ugly. It's the Botox. I need some. Oh, it's fresh Botox. I can move my face. It must be time for me to do a little check-in. Everyone, I hope if you're listening today, this is a really hard topic. There's nothing really to close with except to say, you're not alone. Like you said, there's people out there, there's resources. If you want to reach out to me, and I can put you in touch with Vicky. If you're listening to this, you can always find me at Judging Meghan on Instagram is probably the best way to get me, or judgingmeghan.com is my website. You're going to be okay, Vicky. You're stuck with me for the rest of your life. And I'm so freaking goddamn proud of you. And I wish I could pop into the screen and give you a hug. Everyone.
Same. And can I just say that, Meghan, sorry to interrupt you, is that one thing that's also come out of this for me, Like, look at our friendship. I would never have had that. I never would have maybe even met you.
Yeah. So like out of really bad things, I say all the time, comes really, really good things. I mean, it does. I mean, there's so much in life, even in these really hard times that we're freaking in right now. There's really good things to look forward to. And one of those things is when you have a friend that you love so much that you can trust. And we have that. And I love you so much. And I'm so freaking proud of you. I can't take it. Everyone, you matter. Your story matters. Keep going.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.